The rise in the number of cases that we've seen today is concerning. The cases are predominantly among younger people, but we've seen in other countries across the world and in Europe this sort of rise in the cases amongst younger people leading to a rise across the population as a whole. And it's so important that people don't allow this illness to infect their grandparents and to lead to the sort of problems that we saw earlier in the year.
The schools have reopened, the government has been pleading with people to get back to work. This sort of thing happens. What do you say to those who may be understandably concerned by these figures?
Well, I understand why people are concerned about figures like these. Of course, all workplaces are COVID secure, and we've put a huge amount of work into making sure they are. The same goes for schools. The rise is predominantly amongst younger people, and it's important to remember, though, as we've seen in other countries, that younger people can infect their grandparents, and we don't want to see the spread of this disease because it inevitably then leads to more hospitalisations. We've got to all do our bit and keep following that social distancing.
Some people say you're bound to get more positives because you're testing more people. Do you know what the rate per 100,000 is? That is a key figure, isn't it?
Well, it's true that we're testing more and more people, but even the proportion that test positive is going up as well. So we are concerned about these figures, about the rise in the number of cases. And it's so important that everybody does their bit and follows the social distancing, because it doesn't matter how old you are or how affected you might be by this disease, you can pass the disease on to others, including those for whom it can be very serious and lead to hospitalisations or worse. So don't pass the disease on to your grandparents if you're a young person. Everybody needs to follow that social distancing.
Now, if this rise continues and we get also more hospitalisations and heaven forbid, more deaths, is another lockdown still an option on the table?
Well, we'll take whatever action is necessary, but the first line of defence is that people should follow social distancing. We've also got the testing and the tracing, and they're happening at record rates. We can use and we will use local lockdowns if that's what's necessary. But the first line of defence for everybody, no matter who you are, no matter how old you are, is to follow that social distancing so that we don't pass it on to people who will end up hospitalised or worse. Now, workplaces are COVID secure, schools are COVID secure. It's really important that people follow the social distancing at all times.
Your critics are going to come after you and say, we told you you shouldn't reopen the schools, we shouldn't be going back to work, we should be more cautious than we have been. What would you say to them? They've got a point, haven't they?
Well, it's really important that we've reopened the schools because of the impact on children of not getting education. The workplaces that have reopened, they are COVID secure and they follow strong COVID secure guidelines. What really matters is people follow the social distancing in their social lives as well, because that is how this disease is passed on predominantly. It's at the moment predominantly amongst younger people, but we know that that then leads to cases amongst older people because people inevitably can't help but pass the disease on to their family, their grandparents. And we've seen that in so many other countries. So I'm concerned about the figures, but the most important thing is that everybody needs to follow social distancing.
Are you still convinced that you and the Prime Minister have a grip on this pandemic?
Well, yes, we've got a clear plan. We've got the first line of defence, social distancing, then there's test and trace, then we will go into a local lockdown if that's what's needed. But everybody has a part to play, and the social distancing is a critical part of that.